Hi, you. Who are you? I can't hear you. You're muted.
I know. I was talking to Amy.
Oh, hi.
Hi. So I need to, I don't know how to do that.
Do what?
Shift the information up or share the screen.
Okay, well, here, I'll walk you through it. So go in. See the screen in front of us, see where it says screen share?
Yes.
Okay, so if you click on that, your screen's on your screen's gonna show
Yes.
you and you pick the image that you want to share. So you want to have your screen on whatever you want to share, you want it up on your computer. So you might need to you may minimize windows, so you have two windows.
Ooh, that'd be sweet. I have such a small computer screen. So let's see. So then I would go here and
So get your screen set up first.
hold on.
And I would offer to do it for you, but I'm not going to be able to stay on the whole time.
Let's see. So here is this.
Okay, so on the screen that you and I are on right now, there's a green button that says screen share.
Let's see. Hold on.
I'm not going anywhere.
There we go. Okay, so share screen is what I see. So share screen.
Click that.
I did that.
And is it letting you, is it showing you your screens? Lock the doors, okay? Both of them.
Lock the doors. No. So let's see, where is my screen? Because I just opened this.
Open what?
This. So here, so right now I have, okay, hold on. So now I have open. Here we go. I can get rid of that. Okay, so you don't see my screen at this point.
No, because you have to click the screen you want to share and then click the actual share screen button. So you click the green button that says share screen, right?
Right.
And then it opens another window.
There we go. Now it's there.
Okay, now click the blue button that says share.
Share.
There you go.
It just wasn't showing up yet. Okay, so now I have that and I can go back. Oh, there you are.
And I should be over in a little like toolbar over in the little side.
All right, you're in a tiny little box. Is that where you belong?
That's where I belong.
Never in a tiny little box. But I want to make sure it looks right. Does that look right?
Yeah, you're good. You can hit the presentation mode, but this is fine. Just scroll because we see your toolbar across the top, the blue toolbar.
Right. So how do we get rid of that?
You have to put your presentation in presentation mode.
Okay, well, I don't know how to do that either.
So stop sharing.
Oh, Jesus.
You're okay. See where there's a red button that says stop share?
No, because the only thing I'm seeing right now is you and I. The little box.
You don't see your screen?
I see, no, what I was going to share. And down here is you and I. So where is Zoom?
So at the very bottom of your screen should be all your icons for
Oh, wait. Here's stop share. Okay.
Now the presentation you have on your computer, it says open with at the very top of your presentation. Your slide.
Open with, yes.
Click one of those and it will open it in a big screen. It'll take up your
So there's quite a few choices here. So it's like Google Slides.
Bingo, bingo. Totally works.
Okay,
So now that should be in your screen, right?
yes,
Okay, now go back and do the screen share steps again. And we will see just the
like
Google slide deck, and then we'll all show up in a little sidebar.
share.
Rosie, happy belated birthday, my love. You are not Rosie. Please go back to the way it was. You are not Rosie.
Message.
You are not Rosie, or you are Rosie, but you're not really.
Okay, we don't see your screen, Pam.
Yeah, well, that share is not showing up. Google Chrome,
It is.
is it?
Yes, it's there. I promise you it's there. You have to minimize. There you go. There you go. Get all that crap out of there.
Done.
Okay, and then on your, just do it this way.
This way?
Yeah, don't muck it up. All right, I'm gonna watch, but I've gotta do two things at once. So I'm here.
Or screen sharing. Okay.
I'm here, but I've muted myself, and I'm gonna get rid of my face and show you my eyeballs.
Oh, those aren't distracting at all. Well, I don't know how this thing looks now, so, okay. Let me go back. I don't know how to get back there now. More resume share. Okay. Hi, everyone. Looks like we have 6 people today. And can I see everyone? Let's see. So I see Meg. Hi, Meg. You see me? Okay, you hear me? Elaine, front desk 260 at KW, and Yvonne. That's what I see.
Yes, I'm here, just working a little bit in the background, but I'm here.
Okay, great. All right, so welcome to Bulletproofing the Transaction, a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I believe that a lot of bulletproofing of a transaction actually takes place with, with communication. And as we go through this, you're going to see that a lot of the topic that comes is about communication. And the communication begins, I think, very, very early on, even just with your pre-approval process, or when you first are meeting a client, and whether it's your buyer or your seller, the communication is going to take place based on the questions that you ask. And we know that this business is definitely a question-based business, right? So we just have to ask a lot of good questions and ask questions underneath the questions. And I have been told in the past that I am the queen of questions. So if you ever are stuck for a question and don't know what to ask, then reach out to me, because I'm super happy to share all the questions that we can come up with to bulletproof your transaction. So let's see. So, one of the issues, let's see, actually, I have to make sure I know how to do this. Making it all the way to closing. This is the goal. And so the main topics that we're going to talk about are perspective from the seller's point, buyer's point, inspections and repairs, how to handle the inspections and repairs, who needs to do them, what kind of questions that you need to ask about them, both for the buying and the selling side. Appraisals, loan approval and funding, I think that the lenders really become part of our team as well as escrow. And I like to think of both the listing side and the buying side. So the listing agent, the buying agent, our escrow officers and our loan officers, all as becoming one team, and we all have the same goal in mind. And the same goal is to get to the finish line, to get the transaction to close. Because of course, at the end of the closing is when, we get to hand over the keys, which is a really awesome part. And then after that, we get paid for all of our work that we've done. So it's a good idea to get to the close. Other contingencies, so dealing with any contingencies that come up or the contingencies that a buyer writes in their contract. And so basically we have 3 contingencies that we have to work with right now. And that of course is our appraisal, our loan, and our inspection contingencies. And we know, like, we've been coming out of a market where you either you waived your contingencies, you gave up your firstborn, you delivered blood, whatever it is that you needed to do in order to get an offer accepted. And it seems that we have a little more, a tiny bit more flexibility depending on the property right now in this market. Co-oping and communication. And so again, communication, it really is the key to making real estate go round. Deadlines, meeting the deadlines, both buyers understanding the importance of meeting the deadlines and our partners in the transaction. Have you ever had a transaction with a loan officer that didn't care about your timelines? They didn't care about the deadlines, or even being as a listing agent and the buyer's agent, isn't respectful of those deadlines that are in the contract. So that's a real hassle. Anyway, and then bulletproofing strategies. So when we talk about perspective, the perspective is that it's the time between writing an offer and closing the transaction, signing the documents, is the most important part. And sellers don't want to feel like they're giving the property away, and buyers don't want to overpay, especially in this market. And so the issue then becomes finding a common ground for both parties, for the seller to feel like they're selling at the highest price possible, and the buyers feeling like they're still getting a good deal and that they're not overpaying for the property, especially in a shifting market when the values maybe are in flux and headed down. A buyer doesn't ever want to pay, $2.5 million for a property and then find out 30 days later, right in the middle of that shift, that now all of a sudden their property maybe is worth $500,000 less than it was 30 days ago. Let's see. So when buyers and sellers, they have doubts, the price is not what they wanted, they're less likely to be, when the price is not what the seller thinks that they want, then oftentimes they're less likely to be accommodating in the future. They want to stick their feet in, they want to dig in and not give, not be flexible to get the transaction closed. And if they've already made concessions, then they feel like now it's time for someone else to give. If they've already reduced their sales price, if they've done a lot of updates, if they've paid for pest inspections, whole house inspections, and they've done work to the property, then for sure they feel less likely to give on any sort of sales conditions. So just that there's, a lot of different items to negotiate on a contract and in that contract to close period. And it's sensitive time that requires us to be on the ball and to be paying attention, to pay attention to our timeframes and pay attention to the contingencies that we have. Bruce Hardy, he's a regional director. He said that when he was a mega agent in Spokane, Washington, that 24% of his market fell apart after the contracts were negotiated. And this was during 2007. And so 25% of his transactions fell apart after they were in contract. So can you afford to lose, like, 1 out of every 4 transactions that you're working on? So imagine if you don't have 4 transactions that you're working on, you've got 1. If you have 1 transaction that you're working on and there's a potential for it to fall apart, yikes, that's not good. So we can't afford to lose a quarter of our business. Let's see. So let's see, perspective. Here they are. Owners feel like they're selling too low. Buyers feel like they're paying too much. We got to help everyone to find the middle ground there. In this market, a yes on a contract is not as solid as a yes in other markets. And so I think that we're all coming out of that market where, I mean, you were so lucky to have your contract accepted and you had to sign, like I said earlier, you had to sign everything off. You had to sign that you'd receive the inspections, that you accept the inspections, that you're not going to have another inspection. You're waiving your loan approval, your appraisal on the property. And so that took away any opportunity really in the sense to cancel your transaction. But I'm seeing more of that coming back. I'm seeing contingency periods, maybe not as much as 17 days, but we're still seeing those contingency periods showing up. And a yes right now seems, right now it seems more like it's a maybe. And as the market shifts and we see more property coming on the market, it creates more opportunities for buyers to continue shopping around, looking for, other properties, something that is a better deal. And so I keep track of the numbers every week. And so I noticed that we're right around the same. So there's 300 and actually, I don't have today's sheet. But last week there were 308 active single family residences, and the week before there were 311. So that's 311 opportunities for a buyer to be looking around. And maybe it's not 311, maybe it's just half of that, right? So there's about 150 opportunities. And as new property comes on the market, and in our market, Santa Cruz County, in the last I don't have my sheet from today. I did it, but it's inside my other room. But last week when I did the numbers, there were 71 new listings in 7 days. So, 71 new listings in 7 days means that there's 10 new listings for a buyer to look at and possibly create an opportunity for them to get out of the transaction that they're currently in. Does that make sense? Just shake your head, yes. So what you can do to minimize the number of transactions that fall apart is to be aware of what the most common problems are, have good solutions and scripts, know what to say. I mean, we just have to know what to say and we can avoid a lot of the problems. Avoid problems by addressing common concerns before they arise. And, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but this makes me think that, addressing common concerns before they arise from a buyer's standpoint, when they see a whole house inspection and it's 53 pages long. And what does all of this mean to me, right? Because an inspector goes out there and he writes down everything that he sees. And so for a buyer to understand that this is the view of the inspector and that he's obligated to write down whatever it is that he sees, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with the property. And these are the most common things that we see on a whole house inspection, right? Most times we see GFIs are missing, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, next to the water. That's a pretty common missing. The wrench off of the water or the gas is missing. The turnoff valve for the water is missing. So, there's a lot of things that are pretty common. And then of course, maintain good and frequent communication with all the parties. And it just goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, that, you know, the listing agent and the buyer's agent and the loan officer and the escrow officer all become part of the team in order to bring the transaction to a successful close. So once you get your offer accepted, your communication is even more important to create a smooth transaction for your buyer or for your seller in the end, right? And that's how we're going to, you know, work towards repeat and referral business. So, and the last thing it says here is that keeping transactions together is about managing everyone's expectations and being a person who does not throw gas on the fire, right? So we don't want to be a fire starter. We want to calm all the feathers. So this just says getting most out of the experience. So, you know, this is about how you perceive or participate in today's course. You've probably seen this in the other courses. Are you a prisoner? Are you a vacationer? Or are you an explorer? Are you interested in this information? Are you here only because you have to be? Someone said that you needed to be? Or is a day, you know, a day spent in training better than actually going out there and working and calling buyers and sellers? So you guys can have a look at that. So 5 common problem areas: buyer's remorse, inspections, repairs, appraisals, loan approval, funding, and communication. So if anyone on here, so you've had transactions recently, like what was something that came up in one of your most recent transactions?
Lenders not really caring.
Lenders not caring. Thank you, Jordan.
Sure.
Thank you, Jordan, not Rosie. Lenders, I think lenders not caring, and then I think like the but in a sense, buyer's agents not caring. I mean, being on the listing side and seeing that the buyer's agent doesn't respect the terms of the contract, that they don't remove contingencies in the time frame that they're meant to, or you know, just that they don't remove their contingencies, and they don't communicate that there's a reason why they're not removing the contingencies. They just let them slide, or when you address them and you bring them up and they still don't remove their contingencies. So buyer's remorse, right? It's the first one. So buyer's remorse, inspections, repairs, funding, appraisal, communication. And you know, buyer's remorse, I think, you know, a big picture is that when we understand what the buyer's motivation is to purchase a home, it can help us to eliminate their remorse in the future. And again, goes back to doing the pre-qualification and asking a lot of questions about why they, you know, why is this house the right house for you? Why did you pick this one? Do you see yourself being in this house? What would make this if it's not the perfect house for you right now, what would make it the perfect house for you? And so when we understand what their motivation is, then the less likely that they are to have buyer's remorse down the road. So second guessing their decision to buy a house is known by a number of names: getting cold feet, butterflies in their stomach, jitters. The basic problem is that buyers wonder if they've made a good decision, right? And so they're constantly wondering, like, should I get out of this? But if we understand what their motivation is to purchase to begin with, then we can corral them back around. We can, you know, wrangle them back in and help them to be focused on the big picture of why they wanted to buy a house in the first place. So when you think about it, you know, the reaction, you know, is not that uncommon and not a surprise either, because buying a house is one of the biggest transactions that we'll do in our lives, right? So is everyone here, has everyone bought a house?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. So, you know, for yourself, that is a big deal to buy a house. And, you know, you do maybe wonder if this is the right thing for you to do. Is it the right thing for you to do at this time? And they, as a buyer, you don't do it that often, right? You maybe buy, depending on who you are. I mean, we personally have bought and sold over 32 houses, but
Wow.
the average person is probably, 1 to 5 houses that they'll buy and sell in their lifetime. So people love the idea of owning a home, but the idea of having to pay for it and put out a huge down payment is probably not their favorite thing to do. So again, just going back to their motivation, understanding the reason that they want to buy, why they want to sell, and being able to continue to sell them on the idea of why they're doing that. So buyers worry about payments, right? So but with buyer's remorse, and I know when I bought my very first house, I was about 33 years old, just a couple of years ago. And I was 33 and I had just been self-employed for a couple of years, just under 2 years. And it was a big deal for me to go from renting a house. I was kidding about the few years ago, but it was a big deal for me to go from renting a house paying $600 a month to now owning a house and paying double, paying $1,200 a month plus taxes and insurance on top of that. And I did find, so this is my story that I share with buyers, is that I did find that I worried so much about making these payments. But then all of a sudden I found that about 6 months after I was in my house, I didn't even think twice about making the house payment. The concern went away. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. Recently, I had a client say to me that, well, what if I lose my job? And I said, well, what if you do? I mean, you're renting a house. If you lose your job, what will happen? He goes, I'll find a new job. I said, well, great. So when you buy a house and you lose your job, what will you do? Well, I'll go find another job. I said, well, great. So not buying a house because you might lose your job in the future is not really a reason, because you still will have to pay rent anyway, right? So we were able to manage that cold feet that he was having about whether or not he would lose his job, which was, something fictional anyway. Let's see here. So inspections and repairs, right? That definitely is a time when transactions can come apart during the inspections and the repairs. Let's get there. Whoops. So both buyers and sellers need to be prepared for the inspection and repair process. Buyers view it as a time to get money back. After all, they're concerned about paying too much when prices are falling. They also view it as a time to back out of the deal if they aren't sure if this is the home for them. Whether you're working with the buyer or the seller, you need to acknowledge how they feel, help them understand the other point of view, and your goal is to keep the deal alive. So when we're in a shifting market, we have to educate the sellers a lot more and help them understand what could be coming at them. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that as of recent, something new that's coming at sellers that they probably haven't seen in a long time is paying points so that a buyer can buy the interest rate down. And so we just had a transaction where instead of lowering the sales price, the buyer asked the seller to contribute $5,000 to their closing costs to help them buy the interest rate down. So it turned out to be a win-win on both sides. Let's see here. I have to move ahead. Bulletproofing. Sorry, guys. I don't know if I'm in the right spot here. Inspections. Conversations, prepare sellers for what come next, acknowledge your feelings. Got it. Okay, we did that. So then recommend inspectors that you trust. I think that we all have inspectors and parties to the transactions that we trust, that we can always recommend to our buyers as well as our sellers. Educate buyers about where you are in the process and what's going to be coming up next. So when the inspections are completed, we're going to get the report back. We're going to go through the report. We're going to talk about the items that really stand out, the things that need to be completed, things that are red flags, things that are something that you want to look at in the future, and then the things that are really not any big deal. Like I would see this on every single inspection. And remind the buyers that inspectors document everything that they see. That's their obligation, is to tell us everything, and then help the buyers focus on the big picture and the important issues. Like we don't want to get stuck on, there's a leaky faucet, or I think one of the things I said is like the GFCIs. I mean, there's oftentimes those are missing, and there's just a lot of, there's standard sort of items that show up on the reports that we don't want them to get stuck on. But if there's a foundation issue, then that's really something that we want to talk about. Cracked chimneys are things that we want to talk about, pest and rodent infestations. Those are the things that we want to talk about. But we want to help them to keep seeing the big picture, and that there are people out there that can help them to get those jobs done, so that they could fix them in the future and they don't have to be part of the inspection at this point.
I always try to tell my buyers when they're looking at an inspection report, because for so long we didn't do the inspections. We were reading the reports from somebody else's inspections, is that, every inspector has to find something. That's their job.
That's their job.
Right. So that kind of would calm people down, because it's like, if you take your car to a mechanic, they're going to find something wrong. Okay, that's what they do. And the same thing with an inspector, they have to find something wrong. But it's our job to try to alleviate the fear. And by attending, if you have a question, like if I work with an inspector, I'll have them meet me at the property if my buyer is worried about something, and try to talk them through an easy way to fix whatever it is. Just because they find something doesn't mean it's that serious, or it needs a large money outlay to fix.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And, I think along with what you're saying there, I mean, I wrote a note here, is that remember that, because we are coming from a market right now where most inspections are completed before the property even goes on the market, right? So there's no surprises for the seller. And as the buyers, and we're also coming out of a market where all the reports are available to you, listing agents want those reports to be reviewed and signed and submitted along with your offer. So they know that you're not going to be backing out of the transaction. Your buyer's is committed and not backing out of the transaction based on something that shows up on the pest inspection, right? And so I always take that as an opportunity when we have the pest inspection and those reports are available and I'm showing property to a buyer. It's a little more work. It's a little bit painful, but I'll download those reports. I'll send them to the buyer. I'll ask them to keep them available either on their phone or if they are interested in printing them out. And when we go to see the property, let's look at these big items that are on this report. Let's have a look at them. What do they look like physically instead of just from the report? Let's compare and see if this is something that really is a big issue, or is it something that can be handled at a later date? Can you take responsibility for it? Right. And then also inviting the buyers. So if we're doing the inspections, then we can invite the buyers to the end of the inspection so that they have an opportunity to talk with the inspector. He can go over what his findings are, what the big findings are. He can review that with them. And because it's coming direct from that source, then I think there's a lot more confidence in the report. Yeah. And, they're part of the team as well. Right. So it's essential to have good rapport, and your customers need to trust us so that they'll take our advice. It's especially important to support first-time home buyers. They've never done this before. They've never bought a house. They don't know what to expect. They don't have experience with it, inspection reports. And so we just have to let them know that inspectors are paid to look at and to document everything. And even consider, like, a pest inspection, like if there aren't termites or dry rot or fungus in Santa Cruz County, it only means that they had a report done within the last couple of years and they've repaired those things, because we'll always, seems like 98% of the time, you'll find that there's some sort of pest infestation. Let's see here. So the report is long. The purpose of the report is not to nitpick at every door that creaks, but to uncover any major problems that are not apparent to buyers when you walk through the property. And there's a lot of things that we don't see with our naked eye. Right. So if a foundation repairs are required or the roof needs to be replaced, buyers know what they need to negotiate once they have the inspection in hand. And of course, that always depends on the market. We're coming out of a market where, if you ask for a negotiation on, or ask for money, ask for credit, you would just be skipped and they would go to the next one of 25 offers that they were receiving. Any questions, thoughts on that? So the next is attend the inspections. That helps, attending the inspections so that you can answer all of your customers' questions. And of course, like I said, invite them to the end of the inspection, know what's on their minds, like what on this report is causing you, questions, what's giving you a little bit of a stomach ache when you see this report, and let's talk to the inspector and see what we can find out. Or let's hire, another expert to uncover what the real issue is here. Keep small issues small and provide vendor referrals if they're needed, and then guide buyers through the next steps. I like this. So to put things in perspectives, buyers who get picky about little repairs, oh boy, little repairs should be reminded that every house has minor flaws, and any house they buy will develop problems. They don't exist on the day they purchase the house. When they're the seller, they don't want to deal with every little problem that their buyer finds. Right. So when they sell their house in the future, they don't want to deal with every little nitpicky thing that a buyer finds. And so they have to put themselves in the same shoes. Don't let the inspection become a reason to back out of the transaction. All right, here. So find out how much repairs will cost. One of the things that I have learned over time is that, we get an estimate from the pest inspector, and the pest inspector's estimate, I feel like, tends to be on the high side. And the reason is, I was told from Clive, is that, I'm not really in the business of doing repairs. That's not really my business. My business is to go out, do inspections, get in, get out, provide a report to you, and not really to have to go back to a property again. And oftentimes the repairs that need to be done, sometimes there's things that a buyer can do. They can do them at a later date. They can do them at a more cost-effective price, or they can work with one of our vendors and have the work done less expensively than when the pest inspector gives an estimate. Unless the other agent as your ally, ask the agent, like, who would you get to do this job? How would we go about getting this taken care of? And adopt a positive mindset that says, let's make a deal. Like, I want to work with you. We want to get this worked out. What is it that we have to do to come together on this? So oftentimes, when there's a stalemate between the seller and the buyer, offering up to cover, a portion of it, a third of it, a quarter of it, 50% of it. It says here, I'll pick up a third of that. Sometimes it's just easier to do that and move on with the transaction and get to the next step than to stand at a stalemate or have the transaction come apart. Right, next is in the inspections and repairs, the home warranties. They alleviate buyers' worries. In the future, when a repair is needed, new owners call the warranty company rather than you. So I think it's really interesting about home warranties. And I just had this experience. And I've always felt like home warranties, like I buy them as gifts. It's a great way to show the buyer, that you're concerned about their property in the future. There's an inexpensive way for you to have repairs done if something comes up. But I have not really been a huge fan of home warranties because oftentimes, they didn't cover the repairs that you need, right? They didn't take care of, like they would find some little catch that would cause them to not handle the repair. And so they seem like they were a waste of money. And I've learned recently that they're only a waste of money until they're not a waste of money. Until actually, I'll say this, until 10 days after close of escrow and the hot water heater blows up and sprays water all over the garage, all over, leaking into the kitchen, ruining the hardwood floors. And so the home warranty is, kind of useless until it's not useless. And all it takes is having to use it one time. And for something like that, that now I'm a huge fan of home warranties, even though I've always purchased them for my buyers.
Yeah, that's my gift to the buyer every time is, and it's better than steak knives or whatever, because they can depend on that. And it's happened repeatedly. And I'm sure Yvonne will tell you that, and Shirley too, where you get that call, a couple weeks after them moving in and something doesn't work all of a sudden. And just the relief for me to be able to say, well, you've got a home warranty. They will take care of everything.
Right.
And, then that buyer, turned around, became a seller and another buyer. So, but if I hadn't had that home warranty, it could have, stopped any future business.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's good, home warranty works both on the buy side and the sell side. You can put a home warranty on a new listing that you take, and it protects the property, while you're in that process of getting the home ready to come to market. I just had another transaction listing where they're getting ready to come on the market, and the hot water heater blew. Again, this is a different property. The hot water heater blew, and it blew onto hardwood floors. So it caused a delay in bringing the property to market. The floors have to be replaced. The hot water heater had to be replaced. But we had a home warranty on it, a pre-home warranty, and then that pre-home warranty can switch over to the full home warranty for the new buyer of the property. So Bruce Hardy says that they provide home warranties on every listing that they take. It's a selling feature and a way of alleviating any issues that come up down the road. Let's see, what are your best practices for, it doesn't show up very well, does it? For revolving inspection issues? What are your best practices? What do you do when inspection issues come up? How do you handle it? What do you say to your buyer clients?
Well, I think for me, it depends on what the issue is and how big of an issue it is. Sometimes it is a huge issue like foundation. So, you have to go back to the listing agent and say, okay, let's talk about this. I don't want this deal to fall through. Do you know that kind of thing. On the other hand, if you go back to the listing agent, you want to find out if they have any backup offers so that you can go back to your buyer and say, no, they've got somebody waiting to come into the property. So, we're going to have to, because it's such a great property, you got to keep reminding them about the house, not the inspection. Okay. It's not about the price. It's not about the rate. It's about the house.
Right. That's right, Meg. Exactly. And then remember in the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about the motivation, what was their motivation originally to buy? What was your motivation? Like, what was it about this house that made you say yes to even writing an offer? Right? There was something about this. You like this house so much, or you visualized something happening in your family that you decided this was a place for you to write that offer. And so focusing on the house, focusing on the big picture, the motivation, why they wanted to do this to begin with is helpful.
Pam, there's one thing that I add that's helpful and helps my buyers to understand, because I don't think they think about this next thing that I'm going to mention, is that let's take, for example, the roof. It's at the end of the life expectancy. That's kind of a common thing. And so I share with my clients, or it could be the electrical panel. I've had that in the past, or some plumbing, whatever it may be. And so they say, well, they need to fix that. I said, well, let's look at this. So yes, it would be something that it's health and safety. So yes, we know that it needs the repair. So, but what I want you to think about is moving forward, you as a new buyer, a new owner, you're going to have the advantage moving forward. It's going to help your value of your home. So let's keep in mind that what we're hoping is, yes, that they offer to pay for the whole thing, but most likely we'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to get them prepared, right? I want them to be prepared that they may not get the whole thing. So I already want them to think about it. How are they going to react if they say, I don't know, maybe they'll just put in a few thousand versus the 12 that they're asking, whatever it may be. So just to have them prepared and to have them know that moving forward, they're going to be have the advantage of the new roof, the upgraded electrical, and they'll recoup that in the home value.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, Yvonne. Very good.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they'll benefit from having a new roof. I mean, they won't have to worry about the roof for the next 30 years, and the possibility that they sell their house within a 5 or 10 year period means that they're not going to be facing the same issue, a roof issue, when they go to sell the house, right? And it also adds to the value of their house, and they're not going to worry about that.
Right, and then also though, the seller has a little bit of responsibility of the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance that might have been overlooked or pushed aside, and hey, now they're selling. So they do also have some responsibility. And in this market where we're pretty much stabilizing, as I think it's pretty a balanced market, we have that leeway right now for buyers to get some of these things.
Yeah. Like we've not had for 3 years, right? So there is that
buyers
yeah.
They pretty much have to accept it and just move forward. But yeah.
So is the issues, if there's issues and there are repairs that are needed, I mean, I think it goes back to this, is that we have to counsel the buyers on what their repair options are, right? That they can either put in a request for repairs, they could cover those repairs themselves, or of course at that point, the very last option is that they can cancel that transaction if the repairs are too much for them. Find out what it will cost for the repairs, and look for, if you're going to go back for a request for repairs to the seller's agent anyway, then you're going to want to have estimates from other vendors for those costs so that you can support your request. Like, I wouldn't just put in a request for $30,000 of repairs without having a roof estimate or an electric estimate or any other estimate that was going along with the repairs I'm requesting. It's important to have a good relationship with the listing agent and, bounce the ideas off of them. I know oftentimes it seems, sometimes the relation is combative, that the listing agent, is there to protect their seller and we're there to protect our buyer. But if our goal is to get the transaction closed at the end of the day, then really what can we do to work together? We want to make this come to a successful close at the end of the day. So keeping a good relationship with the listing agent is good. Keep emotions out of the negotiations, just be very factual. And again, don't add, like we were talked about earlier on, it's like not adding fuel to the fire. And I think by keeping our emotions out of it, that we can do that. Agree with the seller on what repairs the seller will make prior to the closing and make sure that the repairs are completed prior to the close of escrow and when you do your walkthrough. And just remember that if they're not done, that, to address that they're not done and put it in writing, and that there's an agreement that those items do get completed before the close of escrow. Have the seller credit the buyer at closing for the costs of agreed upon repairs. If they're not going to get the repairs done, they're not willing to do that, then get them to issue a credit for those repairs. And I think I already talked about, one of the things that we always see on the reports is that there's debris, cellulose debris underneath the house. And I look back at a few inspection reports and they charge $150 to climb underneath the house to get the cellulose debris out. And so if you've been doing this long enough, you understand the cellulose debris is just the crap that someone else, or I shouldn't say the junk that someone else left underneath the house, right? There's some sort of pieces of something that are underneath the house. And so they charge $150 to crawl underneath the house to get rid of the debris. Let's see. So any other ideas about resolving inspection issues? All right.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yes.
I know, there's a pretty experienced group of people here, but I guess one of the questions I would ask is, have you ever had a situation where no matter what you're doing, the two parties just are not coming together? And how do you resolve that in such a way that next time you're doing a transaction with that agent, it's not hostile?
Good question. How do you?
I would say keep professional and always, the goal is to somehow come to a resolution, right? Agreement. And in case we don't, for whatever reason, we just continue to keep it professional.
Right. And I think we talked about keeping your emotions out of the transaction and being very factual, that, and as long as if we're negotiating something, we can't come to terms on it, there's only one of three things that can happen. And, we're in this to close the transaction. So what is it that we need to do in order to make this work? How, what can we do to satisfy your seller at the same time that we're satisfying the buyer's needs as well? And if we've got a report that says that there's an issue and we've got an estimate that this is what the cost is, can we get another estimate? Will that help? I don't know.
I just would also add that, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and we just thank the other party and, let them know we'll be preparing our cancellation of contract and wish them the best. And we go find our client another home. It's just keeping it a matter of fact, like you mentioned, Pam. Keep their emotions out. Sometimes these agents that, you're sending them a request or something, or they asking and they answer for their clients. I never answer for my clients. It's not us. It's the buyer and seller. They're the ones that have to agree or come to whatever agreement. It's not so we got to stay out of it. And I think keeping that too, not giving even though we might know the answer, I always just say, you know what, let me check with my clients and we'll get right back with you.
That's right, because it's not until they have a piece of paper in front of them that they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right? When you make a decision, sometimes the answer is, when you see the paper in front of you, you have a different answer than just having a conversation over the phone. And you're right about the listing agent. I mean, I did have a listing agent just recently say, no, he's not going to accept that. And I thought to myself, wow, he's not accepting it, or you're not. I didn't know that you were making the house payment. I didn't know it was up to you, but I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what you wonder, right? It's not up to you. But then also one thing that came to mind while you were saying that, Yvonne, is that like when you're sending over a request for repairs or another negotiation of any sort, that you're not just going to send it over. I think calling the listing agent and having a conversation about, what your buyer is thinking, what's on their mind, and this is what they've asked me to do. And so I'm preparing the request for repairs or this negotiation, and I'll be sending that over. Not just sending, just without sending it over.
So kind of like what you're already saying, Pam, in regards to the communication, keeping that line of communication going, even though you're probably giving them information they don't really want.
Right. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, like Yvonne said, it's like, if it's not, because really there's only, and I keep this in mind, there's only one of three things that can happen every single time throughout the transaction, right? They can accept it, reject it, or they can counter it. There's only one of three things. So which one do you think that the seller is going to do? And, we're not going to be the ones that are canceling the transaction. So I hope that we can figure out a way to negotiate this. And of course, always, I think, like, in a way, it depends on how many offers that they received on their property. Do they have someone else waiting in the wings? Is it the only one? Oh, they have only one offer, or are there two others that are waiting behind us? Okay, next we're moving on to funding. We're moving on to the big money. Funding, loan approval. Regardless of which side you represent, make sure the buyer uses a reputable and trustworthy lender. And I don't know about you guys, how many times have you had a buyer, you've asked them if they've been pre-qualified? They have, and they are sharing with you their 1-800 number. An 800 number lender, that's what I call them, the 1-800 lenders. So what's the biggest disaster that can happen after you invest time and effort into the sale or the purchase of a home? The biggest disaster might be funding that doesn't come through at the last minute. And I have found with these, sometimes with lenders that are out of the area, lenders that we don't know, lenders that we don't work with on a regular basis, that their communication is less. Actually being able to access them is a little difficult. Call in on the 800 number and that person has not sitting at that desk today. They've switched, they're at another desk, or they're off today, and you just are not able to have good communication with them. So with funding not coming through at the last minute, I always feel like a local lender, if I can walk into their office and I have the ability to walk into their office and ask them what's going on, and have to see their face somewhere throughout the community during the week or the month, is more important than, having a 800 number lender. So sometimes with lenders, the problems that can come up are the mortgage product is no longer available. The mortgage company goes out of business. or the buyer no longer qualifies for the loan. They decided that they were going to go out and buy a new car before they closed their transaction, and now the buyer doesn't qualify for the loan any longer. Let's see, make sure your buyers are pre-approved for a mortgage loan before showing them houses, offer names of 2 or more reputable lenders, submit a parallel application for backup funding when you don't know or trust the buyer's lender. Advise your buyers on keeping their finances in good shape. Yes. Your buyers should always be pre-approved for a mortgage before you take them out to look at houses. And so what kind of questions can you ask them? Like, I'm sure buyers, they're out there during that time when, there are 25 offers coming in on one property. Buyers were writing, 5, 10, 15 offers before they get an offer accepted. So what other ways, how can we find out if they've been pre-approved or who they're working with? What kind of questions could we ask them?
I did an open house yesterday, so I was doing this with the potential buyers that came in, and I usually go with, well, are you in a position to pay all cash, or are you working with a lender?
Mm-hmm.
And right then they usually laugh, because not that many are going to pay cash, and they say, oh no, if you listen, they'll tell you, well, I'm going to get a loan, which means they haven't talked to somebody, or we have a pre-approval. And if I don't get that information, then I follow it up with, so do you have your pre-approval in hand, if I'm not clear about that.
Right. And so then you can also ask them what their what's the name of your lender, what company is your lender with, and has your lender issued you a pre-approval letter yet?
Right.
Oh,
I'm not at an open house. I'm not going to start asking them who their lender is. I'm just trying, it's an open house. And if I get them into the buyer consultation, and then I'm going to actually have them give me their pre-approval. So, and then I'm always going to recommend a second pre-approval, a second lender. You just never know when, something happens with that first loan, but if you've got that second lender ready to go, and I tell them going in, the lender, look, they already have a pre-approval, but it makes me feel better to have you do it in case anything goes wrong.
Sure. And it's a fairly easy process, that second approval. That for sure they can run their credit, they can supply their W-2s, pay stubs, their bank statements, because they've just done that for that they're working with. Right. And then advising your buyers to keep their finances in good shape, like no shopping. You don't get to go out, you don't get to go shopping. And so do you guys know the difference, or I'm sure that you do, the difference between the pre-qualification and the pre-approval? Right. So pre-qualification is just the buyer calling up and the buyer says, look, I'm interested in purchasing a house. Here's how much money that I make. The lender will ask, well, what are your monthly obligations? How much money do you make? And what's the price range that you're looking in? And then they'll figure out quickly over the phone what their monthly payments will be, and whether or not, based on the numbers that the buyer has provided, what they would qualify for. But the pre-approval, then a pre-approval is where they've submitted their bank statements, pay stubs, W-2s to the lender, and the lender's had an opportunity to review those, as well as pulling a full credit report. Right. And then they check their debt to income ratios and their loan to value, and they can verify that they actually qualify for that price range. Let's see here. Look at here. I was ahead of myself. Buyer pre-qualify, the buyer can receive a loan for a certain amount based on minimal information, whatever they've provided over the phone, and then pre-approved is based on actually submitting the documentation to the lender. the 10 commandments. I love this. And I wrote a note here in my notes that to add to your buyer presentation package with some sort of humor, all the thou shalt not, change jobs, become self-employed or quit your job, buy a car, truck, or a van, use your credit cards, spend money that you have set aside for closing, omit debts or liabilities from your loan application, don't buy new furniture. I had a client that went out, had two very strange. One went out and bought all new furniture for the house before they closed on the transaction, and they didn't qualify for the loan. And another time I had a credit report that was pulled right before the close of escrow. And this was really not a good situation. And a new car loan showed up on the credit report. And this was a married couple, but the husband never saw a new car at their house. And it turned out that the wife had purchased a new car for her boyfriend. That transaction did not close.
Definitely not the brightest match in the pack.
There was no closing that day. I think there was some closing of bank accounts and other. All right.
Right.
Anticipating and avoiding funding problems. Let's see here.
I kind of like that saying that we heard from somebody else in one of these classes, that you marry the house, but you date the rate.
Yeah,
The-
that's a
right?
great thing.
I love that saying. I think that's, I've added it to my permanent script repartee, because I think it has a very good point. I had some buyers who were, just trying to get a half a point down. Oh, I got to get it a half point lower, a half point lower. And they almost killed the whole deal because they were the ones that wouldn't accept the rate lock. And we were like, 2 or 3 weeks past close of escrow.
Mhm. Oh, wow.
Yeah. But we closed it. But that's only because my partner was representing the seller.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, so that helped. But
Yeah.
anybody else, it would have died.
Oh, good. Let's see here. So what do you do to avoid funding problems? What financing problems have you encountered? I just told you my 2 financing problems.
I told
Yeah, and you did. And so what do you do to avoid funding problems? And really, I think it all of this, I tell you, I feel like it makes me feel like the minor bird, but it all goes back to communication. Like, we have to talk to so many people and all the time be communicating, and your buyers have to understand that, the biggest one is that people go out and they go shopping before the close of escrow. And whether it's for the furniture or a car or a new credit card, whatever it is, oftentimes that's what they do. So, for a buyer to understand that they cannot go out and go shopping, they can't add anything, they can't change anything, they have to keep their job. Don't quit your job before the transaction closes. After it closes, do what you want. Right? Just think about how you're going to make your payment. Okay, so next is on appraisals. And so appraisers, they represent the best interest of the lenders that they work for. In a market where prices are falling, the lender is primarily concerned about giving a loan for the property that is worth less than the full amount of the mortgage. So appraisers are under pressure to make sure their lenders are not putting themselves at risk. So Terry Morler, an experienced and top producing agent in Westlake Village, California, says that appraisal forms in their area have space for appraisals to check whether property values in the neighborhood are stable, increasing, or decreasing. A neighborhood with declining values has a red flag for lenders, making it more difficult to get a loan. Appraisers are more likely to come in with low home valuations when they see a red flag. So what can we do? What can the real estate agents do to make sure the buyers get an adequate loan to make the purchase? So what can a real estate agent do to make sure the buyers get an adequate loan to make the purchase? Right, so we can do a CMA, we can list the house at appropriate price, and we can have an appraisal done if there are no comps available. Low appraisals. You know, it's been a long time since we've had low appraisals. 3 years, maybe 5 years. I mean, right now, are you guys seeing appraisals coming in below value?
No, they're actually coming above purchase price. Yeah,
Yeah, because you're going back 6 months right now.
yeah.
Where were we? It's gonna happen towards the end of the year.
Mhm.
Pam, with your lending background, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, like, what are some of the hiccups that outside of people spending money stupidly? What are some of the ways to mitigate the appraisal issues? Because they're gonna happen.
So the appraisal issues, meaning that the value comes in low.
Yes.
Well, it's either, again, I go back to, there's one of three things that can happen with the appraisal, right? You could go back to the seller, you can negotiate the price, you can bring in more money. Or if the gap is too large, right? So the seller either has to bring the sales price, agree to bring the sales price down. You have to agree to bring the money in, or you're going to have to, if the gap is too large, you have to cancel the transaction. And ways to help, to support your offer price that you've written is to do a CMA and provide a appraiser with information that they wouldn't necessarily just get from looking at the MLS. Like, what do you know about the neighborhood? Which sales have taken place that don't show up on the MLS? Or what properties have just gone under contract that they may not have seen? Is that what you're asking, Elaine? All right.
I did want to add something, Pam, that I came to realize a few years ago. There is also another option.
Yes.
The buyers, if the appraisal comes in low, the buyers can put in less down payment and then they'll just have to take mortgage insurance for a while. But
Yep.
But there's a caveat because it depends on their debt to income ratio.
That's correct.
As long as they, so there's options.
Right.
And just to have, I think the key is working with a strong loan officer that you can communicate and work out and brainstorm through these things. And there's a handful of lenders out there that have different programs. So we have to, as the agents, we have to have, a handful. So we know that we have some resources just in case.
Right. That's true. And then, the additional down payment from the buyer, so they can, with a low appraisal, they can put either more money down, negotiate the sales price. They can get a gift from parents or someone in their family, but for sure you have to be able to talk with your lender and make sure that the loan program that they're using allows for a gift from their parents, a second mortgage or a bridge loan. If they currently own a property, then bridge loans seem to be making an appearance at this point. And seller assisted options. Maybe the seller is willing to contribute or I don't know if we say this right now, but do a carryback for a certain amount, and there's a separate payment to the seller. What appraisal problems have you encountered or heard about in your area? How can those problems be avoided? What problems? I mean, I don't really think that we're hearing anything right now. But what would
Not
you
now.
expect? Right now, we're not. And so in the future, what are we going to expect? Do you think that we're going to see low values in the future? Like Elaine was saying, it's not now, maybe it's at the end of the year.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. And I always think, well, in our area, well, in our area, it's a little bit different than I feel like than the rest of the world. You know, you travel a few hours away from here and it's a different story. Let's see. So what to give an appraiser? So how can we help out, right? So how can we help an appraiser come to the value? Is by doing a CMA, information about the property to call attention to features that might be overlooked, updates that have maybe been done. I have a listing right now that there's 3 decks on this property, and all three decks were in a state of disrepair and they were not safe to step on. So the decks have all been removed. It's on a 4-story house. So all 3 of the decks had been removed and replaced completely, not just repaired, but they'd been replaced, they've been painted. And you, with your naked eye, you would never know that these decks had been replaced. However, each one of those decks to do the work was around $25,000 to replace these decks. And they're not very large. They're like viewing decks off of this house. So that's something really that an appraiser wouldn't see. And a lot of plumbing behind the walls was updated, changed out. And again, it's something that an appraiser wouldn't see. And so we had all of the receipts from the work that had been done. So we were able to provide some background to the updates that have been done for this property.
Yeah, I think giving the appraiser a list of all the improvements that the seller has done to the property, if you can get that from the seller, if they haven't already generated that, that can help with the appraiser too.
Yes. Yep. That is for sure. So being proactive, is very helpful for appraisals. When you represent the seller, there's things that you can do to make sure that the house will appraise. You always want to do a thorough CMA to set the right price. When there's no comps, you can have an appraisal done before the property comes on the market to help you set that dollar amount. On the buying side, it's the same thing. You can advise your customers in advance and let them know what might happen if the value is low, and know whether or not they'll be able to come up with additional funds for a down payment. So again, it goes back to being able to have communication both with your buyer and seller, and always leading them forward with, these are the next steps at this stage. These are the things that can happen. And when they come up, this is potentially how we address them. Communication. So the idea behind maintaining good communication is to make sure, and we've talked about communication a lot, right? Is to make sure that you're aware of and you have an opportunity to deal with any problems as soon as they come up. You need to keep in touch with all the key players. And I mentioned earlier on that, for me, all of the players are part of my team, and we all have to move together to get a successful close. So the escrow officer, the lender, the appraiser, the real estate attorneys, if there are any that are involved, the other real estate agent, buyers and sellers. And even on the lending side, we used to, when I did loans, it was a very different time than now, but we had great relationships with the underwriter. And knowing the people that are working on the back end of the transaction, right? The loan officer takes your loan application, they run the numbers, they figure out what needs to be done, they submit the package to the underwriter, and the underwriter reviews the entire package, sends out a list of conditions that need to be met in order to get the loan. And so having a good relationship with the underwriter it allows you to say, look, we don't have this, but we have this, or, we can't get this, but how can we work around this? And so the two of you can come up with a strategy together to keep the transaction moving forward. So the back end people of the loan transaction are just as important, if not more so, than the lender themselves. Let's see here. Oh, escrow officer, lender, appraiser, lawyers, other real estate agent, buyers and sellers, and stay in communication as soon as a contract is signed. So of course, as soon as a contract is signed, I mean, we submit it to either our transaction coordinator and she submits it to the title company because those are the instructions, or we send that out right away. Surveys and vendors avoid misunderstanding and differing expectations, ask questions and get things in writing, and communicate clearly and often. So doing a title report, a title search early on the listing site is very interesting. Have sold real estate in a couple of different areas. And in Santa Cruz County, Santa Clara County, maybe even Bay Area counties, I always see that the title report and escrow has been opened straight away. And in the Sierras, Lake Tahoe area, Truckee area, they do not open escrow when they take a new listing, and they don't order the title report until the property is under contract. Which seems, I don't know, a little bit backwards, right? Because you can tell a lot from the title report, and it'll help you avoid other pitfalls that come with the title report. Let's see here. So it says here, Bruce Hardy says that he does a preliminary title search when he lists a property. That way he becomes aware of problems early in the sales process and has time to resolve them. And so it's interesting, what kind of issues can you find out on the title report? Why would you think that's important to get a title report early on so that you understand what issues come up?
Well, I think it depends on whether you're representing the buyer or the seller. I think definitely the earlier the better for the seller, in case there's any liens or anything. I just had a listing. We did the preliminary title report, and surprise, the sellers didn't know about $100,000 IRS lien. Okay, so that would be from the seller. For the buyer, it gives them some information, but more, I use it more as a tool to let them know what we're looking for. We want to make sure that, the size of the property and everything is what they state it is. We want to make sure who owns the property, who should be selling the property. We want to, but if I see any liens or anything like that, extra liens, then I'm going to advise my buyers that it might take longer for a close of escrow than maybe we had anticipated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think we have different issues too, because of how rural some of the properties are in Santa Cruz County.
Ooh, lot lines.
Yeah, you're dealing with lot lines, you're dealing with easements, you're dealing with landlocked properties that have a handshake agreement with a neighbor to allow access that doesn't transfer with the property. You're dealing with leach lines on your neighbor's property, not on your property, that are attached to the septic system. PG&E poles that are in your yard that you have to give PG&E access to your yard to service the poles. It's all kinds of crazy shit, excuse my French. Oh, I know, I didn't mean to shock you, Meg. You're delicateness.
Oh, so delicate.
And then on top of that, you're dealing with mechanics liens on properties, you're dealing with maybe there's people on title that the people who think they own the property don't own the property by themselves. There's, you know, grandma from 500 years ago is still on the property. I know when my mom went to sell the house I grew up in and my father had been deceased for a year, the house was in her name. Their vacant lot that was next door had her name on it, but it also still had the person they bought the lot from's name on it, who was the contractor that built the subdivision that I grew up in, and he was deceased. So it took a lot of little worms and stuff to track down somebody in the family that was willing to sign off that they didn't have any rights to this empty lot.
Mhm.
You know, they would have never had known that until they got to the signing table. But fortunately, my mother had a good real estate agent. It wasn't me because I didn't have my license yet. But anyway, so there's different issues. And then if you have an HOA, you've got a whole nother can of worms.
Exactly. Lots of cans of worms. Most recently in my family, my mother-in-law passed away and she and her brother did a napkin deal. And the napkin deal was that, you know, he would leave his portion of the inheritance in the property so that my mother-in-law could buy this house. Well, it turned out that, you know, a few years later, he passed away. And so all there is this napkin that says that he's leaving this in there and that his 25% of the sales price, the original sales price, is what will be transferred to his kids. Well, they have 6 kids. There's 6 kids that this is being transferred to. And in the process, one of those 6 kids has now passed away.
Oh.
So it has created, just this napkin has created such a problem. And part of it is on the title, but how the details were written out on the napkin. So they had to submit the napkin to the real estate attorney. Anyway.
Lisa Wilson. I'm calling from the Employee Refund Department. Today is August the 1st.
All right, Meg. Okay, so moving on. Let's see, communication. Did I go too far ahead? I went too far ahead, didn't I? Communication.
We did that.
There we go. What questions? Oh, to ask to avoid. What questions should you ask to avoid problems in the contract to close process? Right, so it depends who you're talking to on the seller side or the buying side. And so what questions should you ask to avoid problems in the contract to close process? I think one of the, you know, a big problem that used to happen was in the, you know, after the crash of the last market was how much did a seller owe on their property? And then find out, you know, they've got it listed for sale at one price and the offer that they received was actually less than what they owe on the property. And so finding out from your seller, you know, how much do you think that you owe on the property? And when we get this listed for sale, could you give me a copy of, you know, I'll need a copy of the key for the lockbox. And at the same time, could you give me get a copy of your mortgage statement? Because the escrow officer will ask for that information, you know, in the future, so they can request the payoff. So finding out, you know, how much a seller owes on the property can eliminate some problems in the future. Gather this information. So when the property was purchased, which you can see from the title report, the amount of the loan. So the title report only shows you the original loan that they received. It doesn't show you what their actual loan balance is. So their mortgage statement can do that, and you'll need to collect their loan number and the lender's phone number so that the escrow officer can collect the the payoff, how much the seller owes the lender, and whether there's a second mortgage. Yeah. So the bottom line. The bottom line is to communicate with all the people. I mean, communication is the key to this business, asking really great questions, asking questions that are more than, just the superficial, asking 1, 2, 3, or listening to the answers enough that you can ask another question. Ultimately, when we're working with buyers, we spend a lot of time with them, showing them properties. But spend time with your clients, with your buyers and your sellers, so that you understand, what they're thinking, what their thought process is, how they managing their expectations, how they think things will go, so that in the end they have a good transaction with us and we get a successful close. Handle or closely oversee the contract to close process. Yes, and be sure that you have a great transaction coordinator who can help you through with that process, and anticipate problems and take preventive action to avoid them. Understand the mindset of the buyers and the sellers, what they're each after. They both have different points of views. Look for creative solutions. Think outside of the box. What do we have to do in order to make this come together so that we can close the transaction? You still want to buy, you still want to sell? Great. Let's figure out a way to make that happen. And never give up. Be tenacious. I recently had a seller that said that was it. They didn't want to sell their house anymore. They were going to stay. And I don't know. I think that one of the things I said to him recently was that, we agreed to be in business together. And if I would have known that as my business partner, that you were going to change your mind 3 weeks later, I would have maybe made a different decision about how I invested in our business. And he's like, oh, well, okay, so let's do this. So we came up with another solution, where he was considering canceling his listing because he wasn't getting the price that he thought that he should get for his property. Career growth initiative. So listing management, monthly listings, pipeline, buyer seller, value, GCI. I don't know what this is actually here. Listing appointments, taking listings.
It's showing, it's showing the roadmap to closing a listing and getting a profit, and the number 1 and 2 are what happened. But the wall of value is if you don't give a clear value proposition to your clients, you never get to 3 or 4. You can do 1 and 2 over and over and over and over and over and over. But if your clients don't feel like you're taking care of them and you don't have the skill set, which is going to be extremely important coming up here, to get to the closing table to earn a profit. So you have to be very clearly defined on what your wall of value is as an individual agent, as an agent of your market centers, as an agent of KW. Very, very clear.
Very clear.
That's what that is, Pete.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Anytime, my darling.
Your action plan. Don't put away this guide without developing a plan to put what you learned into action. Refer to the action plan on pages 51 to 53 and write down steps that you'll take to improve your skills. So from this today, like, what if you had to say one thing that you would do? I mean, what would that be right now? I'll go. I'll say that after talking about all of this, I think that my, more the questions I would have now if I were representing a buyer. Ooh, this is really good. The question I'd have, so if I'm representing a buyer, would be like more communication with the lender. And so my questions with the lender would be that, if this appraisal were to come in low, or if we run into an issue, like, does the buyer have the flexibility to cover these? How much flexibility do we have? It's raining.
Is it right now?
It is. Sorry.
It's okay. I ran outside for a minute and I was like, it's gonna rain.
That's surprising. So, I would be asking the lender more questions about what the flexibility that the buyer has. I mean, can they put more money down? Can they put less money down? The amount that they're qualified for right now, is that what they asked you for? Or is that the maximum that they actually qualify for on the buy side? And on the selling side, my questions would be around, and we don't expect this. It is something that we're starting to see more of. If you were to get an offer that's less than what your list price is, what's your flexibility? How do you think that you would handle that? And really digging deep on what the seller's motivation is to sell the property, and understanding that so that we can even always go back to what their motivation was to put the property on the market to begin with. My seller wants to move to Arizona, wants to be with their family. He feels like he's not getting enough cash in his pocket. So we brainstormed and came up with a couple of ideas that, possibly he sells his house here now with this offer, and he rents a property in Arizona for a few months, and he rides out what's taking place in their market over there. And now he can pay cash for a house over there, rather than sitting and, taking it off the market and waiting for the springtime to come back on in hopes that the value has gone up. Yes.
I think, for me, I think buyers need to be better educated on the pitfalls, right? They think now, because there's not as many people to compete with, that it's a wide open field, and now I can go and make. They need to understand all the different ups and downs so that they'll stay the course and not freak out because interest rates gets raised again, or they read something in the paper about that home prices are going down again. You have to really make sure that you're clear with the buyer about their motivation, why they want to buy a house, what's it going to do for them.
Motivation is important. And again, so the motivation, what does that go back to? What does motivation go back to? Motivation goes back to communication. Elaine, are you having a psych? Is that you?
Yes.
Main menu. Which would you like?
You can mute her.
Or press 1.
If you go to participants and
I
you see Elaine, you can mute.
I just got it. Yeah, I muted her.
Pam, I was just going to add, as far as what we all can be doing, working towards working on in this transitioning market, is to definitely stay on top of the market, and being a student of the market right now, because it's still evolving, staying positive, adding value by giving not just education, but giving information so our clients can make a good decision. And it's very crucial right now, because it's when somebody asks me, oh, how's the market? And when I hear people ask each other, especially agents, a lot of times the agents are on the negative connotation. Oh, it's crazy. Oh, oh my gosh, this, that. And I'm always in the realm of, it's exciting right now. Things are stabilizing, and I just point out a few things. And hey, it's great now for both. It's a great time right now. It's a huge opportunity for buyers right now. And I'm saying this is the truth right now. It's right. There's a window of opportunity right now, and I help my buyers to see it, and then it's up to them. Do you want to take advantage? Is this a good time? Does this meet all your needs? So on and so on. So I think educating our clients so they can make a good decision is always, for me, has been utmost of importance. And then also working, having a strong support that we've been talking about, all our resources. I think we need a good team behind us to help us.
Mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I agree with that 100%, Yvonne, and it's such a great point of being a student of the market, because so I track the numbers every week. I have a sheet that I made it for myself. I fill it out every week. I don't have this week's numbers, like I said, sitting right here in front of me, but I have last week's numbers. And so these numbers help me to create a story for whoever it is that I'm talking to. And if I'm asking good questions, I know that if I'm talking to someone, wow, are you thinking about buying or selling? Oh, well, I was just curious about selling, what's going on with that? Well, then I'm able to say, the great thing is right now that we only have 308 active listings in the market. That's last week's numbers, right? But we have only 308 active listings. So the inventory is still very low. There's still only 2 months worth of inventory. Even market is 6 months of inventory. Did you know that? No, I didn't. Right. So when you're a student of the market and you understand the numbers of your market, you're able to very quickly create a story that's applicable to the person that you're talking to. And there's great opportunity. I think you're absolutely right, Yvonne. There's a window of opportunity right now. And there still is a window of opportunity for sellers. The fact is that they're still getting right now, even with prices, inching a little way down, in the last 30 days, the average sales price of a single family residence in Santa Cruz County was 1.469. And a condo or a townhouse was at 923. Like, when did they ever see $923,000 for a condo or a townhouse in Santa Cruz County? I think that's still a good deal for a seller, depending on what they paid for the property, right? So when you know your numbers, you're able to create a story weave a story that helps a buyer or a seller to understand.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I think this is the end of our taking other courses in the Shift Tactics series, and from ahas to achievement. So, what ahas did you get today? Hopefully one.
Yeah, I think we did that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. We did that.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for your participation. I appreciate you showing up for today's section. And if you have any questions, I'm in Santa Cruz or Capitola actually, and I'm glad to help with anything I can.
Thanks, Pam.
You did a good job. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, you guys, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.